Okay. All right. I think we're good. Let me just check the periscopes to see if it's there. All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is this going good? Checking periscope to see everything's fine here. It's not coming up. Try this again here. The periscopes to see if it's all right. We're good. Okay, so we're going to look at we're going to continue looking at several studies, and we should be done with it today. We're already up past halfway. Studies that challenge your sense of the ordinary, and your assumptions considering substance use. So, for instance, we looked at some studies before that, we looked at a longitudinal study that showed that IQ change. It was a twin longitudinal study that IQ change doesn't happen when people use cannabis. So we looked at several other studies like that. Just to give you a little refresher real quick, we looked at how culture defines drug use and drug abuse. We looked at how being a pot user, let's say a cannabis user, doesn't affect your ability to function as an adult. We looked at a study that showed that no matter how much you smoke or whatever, that if you don't smoke for about 2 months or so, you will have no lingering effects. So people who say that, or was it a month? Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. I messed that up completely. No, 72 hours. I see. You see, I still buy that bullshit in my head. That you don't that you smoke and then you're messed up for 2 months or something. See, I still buy that shit. No, it's 72 hours. So it doesn't matter how much you smoke before. 72 hours afterward, you will be completely sober. It'll be baseline. We also looked at how caffeine increases risk taking in teenagers. So all this energy drinks that leads to more stupid behavior among them, but that's legal. We looked at neuroethics of the cognitive enhancement, and showing that cognitive enhancement is not only moral, but it is also authentic. It helps our excellence, which is achieving our goals better, and excellence. Means doing the best we can at the highest level, right? So when we take something like even like caffeine, right, in the morning, that's not a moral issue there. You're like, oh, this isn't my real self reaching this, doing, the drug is doing it for me. You don't feel that way. And that, we looked at the study, how it really shows how, it's not a study, it's a philosophy paper, but this is a philosophical topic, how, taking substances in responsible ways helps you achieve your goals, confirm with your authenticity, right? Because you're doing what you want to do, right? You're taking a drug and you want to get a certain effect from it, so you do it for what you want to do. And of course, I'm not including abusive behavior here in this. I'm talking about just people who use. And then finally, it's excellence. It still has excellence. You're doing you're being the best you can be by using these enhancers. And so we looked at that. If you want more information on any of these, you could just go to the last two. Actually, there's the last 3 videos. There's a 2.5 because it's so close together. But yeah. So okay. And finally, we looked at a study that showed that all of the harms associated with cannabis are just overstated. Many of the older studies before 2000, 2005 are just can't be really trusted. But we have lots of studies today. All right, so let's start with what we have here that you've probably been looking at for a while. Like, oh yeah, when are you going to talk about this? This right here is a study talking about the adulterants in Mali, right? And how the impact of harm reduction services has helped that problem, right? So we have Mali, which is this, people say it's more pure. I hate with that because it's really any powder in there. And so it shows how there's a lot of these like cathones and stuff, and that here's an basically, okay, so we have here the average adulterants in Mali, right? in these capsules, and we could see that, a lot of it is unknown. They don't even know what's in it, most of it is methylone, other cathones, which methylone is a cathone. MDMA is not a cathone. Methamphetamine, BZP, which is, I believe, it used to be legal until like 2005 or something. It's a crappy drug. It's a stimulant, but it's so crappy. They used to, it was just, the only reason why anyone ever used it was as a replacement for ecstasy. DXM, for fuck's sake. Methadone in there. So you could see all the adulterants. And so they talk about how, that this problem of bunk shit there, that these harm reduction services there, like DanceSafe, or what was the other one? A bunk lab bunk, something like that, like bunk lab or bunk data, something like that. These groups go to raves and such and festivals, and they set up centers where it's like, listen, we'll test whatever you have. We're not going to judge, and we're not going to call you. Just, it doesn't matter what you bring, right? And certain places have worked that out. And I think like it's that let it happen because it's saving lives. And what the study shows is that yes, it's saving lives. People are not getting hurt as much because it's a beautiful thing, man. These guys are really, they do this for free. They do this out of love. So what they do is, and no, they don't take the drug. No, it's not like, oh, you gotta give me some of that. No. But so what happens is they're there at like a rave or something, and they got all the testing equipment, like the same stuff the cops have, right? And that you can buy, it's legal. And so these guys would come over. They got like, I just bought some Molly and I don't know what it is. Can you guys check it for me? And so what happens is, all right, and then boom, it turns black. Well, I already know what test it is, but it turns black, it turns purple. Okay, great, it's MDMA or close to it. But then it's like, oh no, it's yellow, it's orange. Oh, that's methamphetamine. So it's and then people are like, oh, I don't want to, and so it prevents all this shit from happening. And then at the same time, it's like, hey, you sold me this shit with so it kept people in check. It's a great thing. So this study does it not by rambling like me, but it shows in in a damn, look at this, most a little bit more than half, man. Look at that. Most of almost not most of the stuff, but a lot of this, a good chunk of that stuff has no MDMA in it, man. But anyway, like, so this study does it in scientific way. See, this is the first study in North America in over 10 years to sample nominally MDMA containing products. Results suggest that the assumption in the literature that Molly is less adulterated is incorrect. Of course, I don't know why people thought that. Like, oh, it's so much purer. Like, I like presses. I like pills. I mean, that's how I first did it, and I love them. They're just colorful. They're almost a little like candy and stuff. You can cut them in half easy, whereas these Molly, that came later. I stopped doing it after that. Like, that came in the early 2010s. I already stopped using MDMA by the 2010s. And it's just, I don't know. People kept saying it was pure. I'm like, you guys are dumb. What do you mean it's pure? Just because it's a powder? The Molly is less adulterated. Okay. Where are we? Okay, so Molly is less adulterated is incorrect, and patients who report ingesting any nominally MDMA-containing product must be considered at risk for the worst clinical overdose syndromes. These results may also inform the public about the relevant risks of these products and discourage a false sense of security about the purity of nominally. And when I mean nominally, they're just saying like that you buy something that's called MDMA. That's what it means. Like that you bought it and that it's nominally MDMA. That it's called it's called Molly or MDMA, but it's not really. It's just a scientific thing. It's just being they do this to be over specific so that other people can replicate it easy. That's why they're so specific and robotic about talking what they do. This study is also the first to show how pill testing services change participants' intent to use substances, right? With a decrease in the change, with a decrease in report intent to ingest substances when MDMA was not detected. Quizzically, less than 60% of participants whose substance tested positive for MDMA verbally reported the intent to consume their substance after testing, raising the question of why they were having their substance tested in the first place. That's figure 1B. This may be due to participants having substances tested on behalf of friends or with the intent of otherwise distributing as opposed to consuming themselves. Because these possibilities would only apply to both of those whose pills ultimately tested positive or negative for MDMA, our data nonetheless suggested a negative test for MDMA substantially decreases the intent to consume the substance, obviously. Basically what they were saying though, is that the people who tested positive, right, for their MDMA, they're saying that the reason why it's only 60%, right, because you might say, well, what are the 40% doing, right? Maybe this isn't helping. They're just saying maybe those guys are dealers. Just the way they write it, though, it's so funny. But the intent to distribute, it's just so funny. Just some things. I kind of like that. I love that shit. Like talking about crazy stuff, but in that language, in that kind of like a passive language. It's funny, and fun too. And when you know how to do it in person, where you could insult someone but put it in a way where it's like ambiguous, right? Where it's like maybe that could apply to someone else too. Oh, it's the best. Okay. So you could literally just tell someone like, why, keep that shit to yourself, and yet people think it's like, oh, you're talking about something else. Oh, it's beautiful. Okay. Participant report intent to ingest a substance. This would be interesting question for the future. Okay. So obviously what they're showing here is that people who tested different, it's like, what the hell, they're not going to take it. So it's like it's working. People who the intent of it, which is if we don't know what this is and it's not what you intended, you're not going to take it. Otherwise, you would have taken it and had a bad time. So it's working. Again, they talk about the Netherlands and stuff. By the way, the Netherlands and a lot of Western Europe, they use a lot of this stuff. In England, they do this stuff all weekend long. It's crazy. We barely do that here. People roll here, but they don't roll for like every weekend for the whole week. And you know what it is also? They mix it with amphetamines. That's also because MDMA on its own isn't really stimulating. It's a little stimulating, but it actually makes you want to kind of just like lay on the floor and hug somebody and touch, like massage and stuff like that. You don't really want to move around that much. It's like a lot of MDMA. When I used to see the presses, they would be cut with caffeine to just get people up, like 200-300 milligrams of it or something, to just get people start moving and stuff, and it's to dance, So it's this is interesting. A lot of people think, oh no, MDMA makes you dance for hours. I mean, not really. Like that, you could if you put your mind to it and stuff, and if everyone else is dancing, you'll be encouraged to. But if it was just left to your own devices, you'll just want to like lay down in a cuddle puddle, And I think that cuddle puddle is not that great unless it's with you and your wife, because that leads to increased bonding, and that's where it matters the most. MDMA is perfect for couples, especially a couple times a year. Alright, so they talk about their limitations. You can see that on the screen, right? That's what I love about doing this as a video. So it's like you can just pause this and just read this if you want. Boom. There you go. Alright, let's look at the other one now. Next one. Ooh, okay. This one talks about how hold on, I can actually see my where's my summary here? Okay, so this right here. Oh no, wait, no, that's the wrong one. Where are we at? Ah, here we go. Okay, so what we have here, see, I went in reverse order. What this study has to do with is showing how the negative aspects of teen cannabis use that have been reported or people just see naturally, like, oh, that kid smokes weed, and there's all this other, there's problems with them, right? And it's because of weed, right? Like, because, they just see the guy with problems, they see him smoking weed, and they associate weed to be that, and then studies in the past have concluded that erroneously. So what this study talks about is that, here you go, the results. I'll tell you just the results. They looked at upper middle class kids, right? So basically they looked at just the kids who were well off. Basically, they didn't look at anyone with and they looked amongst them, right? Because that's like a little restricted population. So it'll tell you more, right? Because people might say, oh, this is just the reason why there's differences is because the kids who are lower class are more likely to use and get problems or whatever. So they're trying to control for that. What's great is, honestly, you can just mute this if you really hate me talking. Although I think you should hear, because I have a good, at times, good comment and stuff. Anyway, so let's talk about the results here. Persistent cannabis use across the 4 years of high school was associated with lower grade point average, oh my god, lower stochastic aptitude test score, and greater externalizing symptoms in the 12th grade, but not with greater internalizing symptoms. That's like, depression and stuff like that. Like, the externalizing means like behavioral stuff, and internalizing symptoms means like your emotions, your attitude. Moreover, persistent cannabis use was associated with lower grade point average and greater externalization symptoms in the 12th grade after controlling for 9th grade levels of these outcomes. Similar associations were observed for persistent alcohol and tobacco use. Check this out. Effects for persistent cannabis use became non-significant after controlling for alcohol and tobacco use, persistent alcohol and tobacco, reflecting the difficulties of disentangling cannabis effects from alcohol and tobacco. So, conclusion. Low socioeconomic status cannot fully explain the associations between cannabis use and poor academic performance and mental health, because, they got to take into account tobacco and cannabis use. And alcohol use. So, again, to put this in kind of like a more layman's terms, what they're saying here is that when you look at overall, just you take the number of people who use weed and then look at their GPA over time, right? Especially if they started early, it goes down. But they said if you look instead at the people who use weed but don't use anything else like tobacco or alcohol, right, just weed, their IQ doesn't go down. It just, there is no effect. So what they're saying here is that we can't just say, and they do this again with higher upper middle class kids. So none of these kids are poor, right? They all have families and well off and all that, can eat and all that stuff. So what they're saying here is that all this stuff about socioeconomic status being the reason for why these things happen, and for in some kids and not others, right? These GPA differences after smoking weed. They're saying that really isn't a factor here. What the factor is more likely to be the factor, at least part of the factor, right, is tobacco and alcohol use. And so this is really interesting because basically it just shows that the kids who use weed but not anything else in the high school don't get dumber. Or not dumber, but because GPA is not a measure of your intelligence, but definitely not. I'm not even going to go there. But GPA is though definitely not a measure of performance. So I don't want to make it seem that way. I hear associations were not specific to cannabis. They still don't understand the mechanism of how this interacts. Like, how is it that these using these substances actually leads to poor academic performance and those symptoms, external symptoms. Okay, and then they just talk about future studies and the limitations. All right, let's go to the next one. Oh no, I went over that one already. Oh shoot. Okay, this is where I let off. Okay, but whatever, we got to see that. That's cool. Okay, okay, this is where it was. The context, that's where I left off. Sorry everybody, but I mean, hey, it's still interesting. Okay, let's look at where I truly left off last time. It's good to go over it again, right? That last study. This is so interesting. Okay, psychedelics and the essential importance of context. Let me just make sure you guys are seeing this. Okay. Psychedelic drugs, right, psychedelic drugs are making waves as modern trials support their therapeutic potential in various media continue to pique public interest. In this opinion piece, we draw attention to a long-recognized component of the psychedelic treatment model, namely set and setting, subsumed here under the umbrella context term. The umbrella term context. We highlight A, the pharmacological mechanisms of classical psychedelics, right, 5-HT2A receptors, that we believe render their effects exceptionally sensitive to context. Interesting. B, a study designed for testing assumptions regarding positive interactions between psychedelics and context. And C, new findings from our group regarding contextual determinants of the quality of a psychedelic experience and how acute experience predicts the subsequent long-term mental health outcomes. We hope this article does, inform good psychedelic research and provide a roadmap for optimizing treatment models, and finally help tackle unhelpful stigma surrounding these compounds. That's good. Yeah, we want to get rid of that stigma. Let's just go through it real quick, because it's the whole thing is pretty interesting. All right, so here's a little diagram. We tell you what they believe here. So you have the cultural setting that sets your expectations, that sets your acute experience with the psychedelics, and then finally that acute experience affects your long-term outcomes, and then your long-term outcomes like changes in mental health. Then your long-term outcomes actually feed back into the cultural setting, right? Because you become an agent in culture, and you subsume culture, and you create culture, and all that sociological stuff. So let's go on. Here's another diagram of how these substances work beyond the pharmacology. And you have certain traits. These traits create a pre-state. That pre-state creates the state when you take the dose, right? The dose is up there. And then the environment, dose, boom, state, they're in, right? Now the environment also interacts with your pre-state. And then with the overall outcome of this, the environment interacts with that as well. I love diagrams. I really do. They're so cool. They really sum up everything. Let's see. Uh-oh. They're talking about here how psychedelics are, that the potential misuse of psychedelics isn't the same as other drugs. Because basically they say here, because you plan out for the drug experience more so than any other drug. Like, someone who's taking dope, they'll just take the dope. They don't really think about like when they're going to take it and how they're, they only care about getting it, right? Whereas the person with the psychedelic, they may not even take it in their home, like a person with dope, or in a safe place, normal place. They might like travel to a faraway place for a specific time, at like a festival at a specific date and all this stuff, and do it in a specific context. Like they say, all that planning kind of makes it different from other drugs, like that are used, from other illegal drugs, like recreational psychoactive drugs that are used. And that's an interesting, that really says something, because it really is, that just shows you how much context really plays into psychedelics. I hope they talk about in this study the the implications of your trip, but the integration of your trip, making sure what you learn is applied. Like you don't just go through the experience and then you don't understand it, because there'll be things that come up that you may not understand at first or get. And later on, you could put them into context. But if you never do, then that can kind of just lead to these bad long-term outcomes. But okay, you got to feel like you're ready to surrender. You got to have a clear intention for it. So these are the things you need to do to have a good psychedelic experience, or at least a more or less positive one. You have to surrender to the experience. Meaning you can't try to control where it goes. Just almost like you want to like lay in water and float. Just that's it. Just expand your body and just don't do anything beyond that. have the experience in the therapeutic setting and taking a higher dose. Yeah, definitely. It says here that when you look at all the data, people who higher doses in general are not associated with bad trips. I think that's the case because the people who are taking the highest doses are those who are the most experienced with it. So that makes sense. And the people who are probably going to have the worst negative episodes with it are those who are least experienced with it. They could probably not take that much, right? Maybe you have the small case of someone who never planned to take it, and then they got misdosed with like 5 tabs or something, but that's rare, right? It's usually a person who wants to try it, they take a little and they freak out because they don't like it. That's why weed's a good kind of middle ground to figure out if you're okay, would you be okay with other psychedelics. Actually, there's a test you can do. There's a test you can do with it's called carbogen, and what it is, it's like instead of a normal oxygen carbon dioxide ratio that we take in right now in the world, it's a gas that's like mostly carbon dioxide but some oxygen, so it's enough to help you breathe, but because there's a lot of carbon dioxide, it's almost like waterboarding, in the sense that waterboarding simulates drowning, but this would simulate choking or suffocating, actually. And so you'd be like, what the fuck? But the reason why they do this is you're not going to suffocate. You just feel like you are, but you're not. And so what the carbogen is, if a person can calm themselves down, right, as they're taking in the carbogen, and like keep in their mind like this is just the effect, even though my physical response to this is I'm choking, I know that I'm really not. And that if a person, and it's extreme, but if a person can go through that pretty well, or train, that's actually the best way you can train for a psychedelic experience, because the worst parts of psychedelic experience are where things are going off, like you're dying, or things are ending, or danger, and it's like you got to know that 99% of that on the psychedelic is not, because you're already, let's say in a safe environment that you set up before and nothing's happening there, that's just pure anxiety. It's pure paranoia. So if you can keep yourself calm during the carbogen experience, keep not thinking you're going to suffocate, then doing a psychedelic is breeze. It's a breeze because it's nowhere near as tough as like trying to keep your mind like. It's kind of like the Vince Lombardi way of training. The training is super more difficult than the actual game itself, right? That's why he took the worst team in the NFL, Vince Lombardi, and made them like Super Bowl champions like several times in a row. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing story. It's very, they talk about how even though they love him afterward, that while they would train with him at the football players, in retrospect, they would talk about how they would hide from him and stuff because they hated him so much. And I've noticed this is the same thing with like drill sergeants in the army and the Marines and stuff, that when you're there you just hate them, but then once you graduate or you're done with the program, you love them a lot because you could see the tough love and how they just wanted you to grow. And all right, so anyway. Okay, so yeah, that's it just talks about that. In summary, this article has sought to highlight the essential importance of context in determining the quality of a psychedelic experience and its long-term outcomes. It is proposed that neglect of context may account for the rare psychological harm that has been produced in association with psychedelics. So they're saying, for you people that get hurt on this, for the few people that get hurt from psychedelics, it's because you didn't plan this out right. It's because you didn't consider context. Now, that may not be your fault because maybe no one ever told you or whatever, but still, that's why. Don't blame the drug. So for it to be a Schedule 1 doesn't make sense because there is a safe way to use it. This is interesting here. So this is the likelihood you'll have a good peak experience, and this is the likelihood you will have a challenging experience. I love how they don't call it a bad trip. That's why they try to say it's just a difficult one. Because you can learn a lot. It can be very beneficial, but it's difficult. And you gotta. But those are the ones you remember the most. The ones, I've had many trips, and the ones that were all fun, I barely remember. Especially, I remember like them in like in totals, kind of, but like not like in very much detail. I just remember, like one acid experience was just perfect. It was from the white on white tabs. It was just a perfect color. It was so clean. It was really good, clean acid. Anyway, yeah, shit, sorry. So it's not a negative experience, but still, it's still difficult to go through. No one really wants it, but sometimes you got to get what you need. Anyway, they say that when a person is more ready, when their intention is high, like they know exactly what they're taking this for and why, they're in a good therapeutic setting, right? Doesn't mean you need it just means that you're in a safe setting. You feel comfortable there. It's it's part of, it plays into the intention. You're not doing it on a boat in the middle of a river in some country. You just start some Indian country or part of India that you've never been to before. This is Sam Harris, and then say, well, this is a good set. I'm in a good mindset, and this is a beautiful setting. This perfect setting of the trip. Like, idiot. No, therapeutic setting means a safe setting. That you feel comfortable in. That's that's part of that intention. And the drug dose, the higher the dose, well, again, you got to see that's correlational. We talked about why, right? Because of the people who are most experienced, the ones who are least likely to get the bad trips, are taking the highest doses. So that's going to mess up the data a bit, All right. And so. By the way, the readiness wasn't significant, so it's a little bit off. It's 0.07. And then so the challenging experience, on the other hand, can if you're not ready for the experience, right? That's a huge beta. 0.46. That's like if you're not ready for the experience, you're 20% more likely to have a challenging one. Roughly. Put me at 20, maybe like 23, right? Your intention, if you have no intention, you're like around 12% more likely to get the challenging experience, right? If your trust is low in the experience, like you don't trust the experience, you don't surrender to it, you are roughly like 18, 19. Yeah, something like that. Between 18 and 19%. More likely, so you could add those percentages up, and you can see it's pretty likely, right? And it's funny that they're almost at the same level. Okay. So their hypothesis, 2x2 test. They look at the enriched context, influences with the drug condition, and yeah, we saw that there. By the way, I just want to see real quick how they get their data. Like, was this let me see, hold on. It's not broken up in the way that I anticipated. I'm trying to look for the part where they just say where they got their data. That's all. I gotta read this later. I think. Let me see here. Okay. All right. This isn't necessarily. This is okay. This is more like. This is kind of like an editorial. This is like an editorial. Yeah, they can do that sometimes. All right. Let's go to the next one then. Ooh. This has to do with psychedelics and the microbiome. psychotropics. So how drugs affect your gut bacteria. Let's see that. Hopefully, it's coming up there. What's going on? Look, it's materializing. Okay. There we go. Psychotropics and the micro. A chamber of secrets. The human gut contains trillions of symbiotic bacteria that play a key role in programming different aspects of the host's physiology in health and disease. Psychotropic medications act on the central nervous system and are used in the treatment of various psychiatric disorders. There is increasing emphasis on the bidirectional interaction between drugs and the gut microbiome. An expanding body of evidence supports the notion that microbes can metabolize drugs and vice versa. Drugs can modify the gut microbiota composition. In this review, we will give a comprehensive introduction about this bidirectional interaction. Then we will take into consideration different classes of psychotropics, including antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, antidepressants, opioid analgesics, mood stabilizers, drugs of abuse, alcohol, nicotine, and xanthines, which is caffeine. Caffeine, the type of drug that caffeine is called a xanthine. There's other ones too. Anyway, I was gonna give you an example one, but I can't remember it. The varying effects of these are widely used medications on microorganisms are becoming apparent from in vivo and in vitro studies. This has important implications for the future of psychopharmacology pipelines that will routinely need to consider the host microbiome during drug discovery and development. So let's go to the discussion so we get the synopsis. We just got some, but a little bit detailed more. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. That's probably why. Let me get rid of my. Oh no, I can't. That's right. I'll get rid. Oh, can I? Okay. In Harry Potter, oh Jesus, the basilisk hidden in the chamber has the power to petrify people and possess a threat for Hogwarts School. What happens in the chamber will affect the entire school and vice versa. God, I hate this. Similarly, increasing evidence suggests that the gut microbiome affects and can be affected by various chemical compounds. This bidirectional influence is more and more studied in relation to psychotropic compounds. Initially thought to only work on the brain, in recent years psychotropic compounds have been shown to have antimicrobial activity, which could be good or bad, in both vitro and in vitro. It is evident from the data reviewed that different microbiome effects have been attributed to psychotropic compounds ranging from medications to drugs of abuse, caffeine, and alcohol. The challenge now is to assess the functional role of these microbiome changes. Okay, so let's see an example. Let's see caffeine, right? Caffeine consumption has received much attention in recent years in relation to microbiome alterations often associated with metabolic disorders. Check this out. Consumption of 3 cups of coffee daily for 3 weeks in healthy volunteers did not alter fecal profiles in the dominant microbiota, but increased the population of something. Moreover, in subjects, there was specific... Okay, so hold on. I have a... I've got a probiotic. So let me just see if this is there. Yes, it is. That's cool. Bifidobacterium. Yeah, it's right here. Bifidobacterium. And you can see. Oh wait, you should be taking. Anyway, so there you go. Taking caffeine is good for your gut. Rejoice, coffee drinkers, rejoice! Your drug has been shown to be good for daily use and yada again. Woo! Showing that some drugs, even drugs that you can take enough to kill you, or if you take too much, they will ruin your, like you would never sleep or anything. That even some drugs are okay to take every day. That's some psychoactive. So it's like this idea, like, oh, you can't take anything. Oh, that's wrong. Okay, let's look at some others real quick. I want to see the opioid one. Nicotine. Let's see nicotine. Nicotine consumption and also smoking cessation induced profound changes in the gut, with an increase in Firmicutes and exin bacteria and a decrease in at the file. Okay. In addition, smoking cessation induced an increase in microbial. The effect of tobacco smoke on the oral gut and gut microbiome has been recently investigated in a human cohort, where tobacco smokers displayed a higher relative abundance of prevailing, lower bacteriolosis, whatever, I can't say these names, and lower Shannon? There's a bacteria called Shannon? If anyone ever had a girlfriend named Shannon. Diversity in tobacco smokers compared to controls. See, so a little, might be good for some, but bad for others. So, tobacco smokers, you have not been vindicated. Regarding alcohol, you would see THC up there. A mixture of THC and CBD has been shown to mitigate experiential autoimmune into blah 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 by altering the gut micro. So it says here that THC can and CBD, which is present in most of these stuff, that those two can prevent or mitigate, like make it less worse, autoimmune disorders, certain autoimmune disorders. All right, let's see alcohol. They looked at alcohol. Lower medium abundances of bacteria and higher ones of this. 2 studies have demonstrated the alcohol-dependent subjects. Okay, so looking at people who drink alcohol every day. So people who like drink every weekend, they also had some changes in the whatever. People with cirrhosis also had changes. So it doesn't seem too good, but they don't look at people who drink not regularly, what's the word, socially or like once in a while. So methamphetamine, it's only you only have with rats, studies with rats of methamphetamine. Let's see, some local and then cocaine might also do some. So cocaine might have some effect there. Regarding cannabis, here we go. Recent evidence has shown that modifications in the gut biome consequential to diet-induced obesity are prevented in mice treated chronically with THC. Oh boy. Okay, let me read that again slowly. Regarding weed, recent evidence has shown that changes in the gut that lead to diet-induced obesity, are prevented when rats take chronic doses of THC. The gut bacteria that leads to obesity is prevented from giving you obesity when you take high doses, chronic doses of THC. They didn't say high, but they said chronic doses. I didn't know that. That's amazing. That's beautiful. You see, this is why we're doing this. We're learning about stuff that challenges our sense of normancy. That's what these are, red pills. Or green pills or something. But just like before, where I messed up and I said that it might take 2 months to recover after smoking weed, and it's like 72 hours, and it's shown scientifically. Boom. Not your one study, which is really just your anecdote. No, okay, your N of one. Your as an old professor used to say, your N of one. Whenever someone in class would talk about only their experience, they'd be like, "You have an N of one." Who cares? Anyway, There you go, guys. I didn't hear anything like caffeine doesn't do that. I mean, the caffeine did increase some of the good ones, though. Caffeine seems to be passable. THC and weed seems to be passable. Oh, that's beautiful, isn't it? Oh, that's beautiful. That's great. Now I got a new reason why THC is awesome. It can help prevent. Now I could be wrong because it's mice, but a lot of the things, you know how they say we're like 98 or 97, maybe 95% similar to chimps and monkeys and apes. We are 92% similar to rats. I know. We're actually over 60% or so related to bananas. So just think about that whenever someone says you're a monkey. Alcohol generally exerts, and we saw that it was not great. Altered, so ethanol that was vaporized. You could vaporize alcohol, yeah, for sure, and it decreased some. So it seems like to be a good and a bad thing. It does some good stuff and it does some bad stuff. Like caffeine seemed to be the only one that didn't do anything bad, just increased the good stuff. So wow, I didn't know. Oh, let's see ketamine. Wait, what? Oh, check this out. It says cannabis exerts a strong antimicrobial activity against a wide range of microorganisms. So it might be protecting guts from like infections and stuff. And, it doesn't say much about ketamine though. Let me see. The other it's in the antidepressant section. Oh, opioids. Let's see that. Let's see, morphine was administered. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, morphine-induced alterations in gut microcomposition were associated to a significant increase in pathogenic bacteria and a decrease in communities associated with stress tolerance. Ooh. In a different study in mice, both intermittent and sustained morphine administration influenced the gut microbiome in a way that was causally related to behaviors associated with opioid dependence. Oh wow! So it's saying that it changes taking morphine changes your gut microbiome to make you more likely to get addicted to morphine. I mean, it is. Never I said the opioids they may not cause organ damage, but they are super duper addictive. Because they're just so good, morphine. But check this out, though. Also, the stress tolerance stuff. So you're less likely to deal with stress when you're taking morphine with your microbiome. But hey, you can supplement. You're talking about tramadol, but I don't know. It's a little different, Okay, let's see the where's the antidepressant stuff, because I want to see ketamine. Let's see anything on Xanax? No? Nope. Here is ketamine. Okay, ketamine has been shown against 6 strains of bacteria. So it kills 6 different strains of bacteria. Ooh. Bacillus and E. coli. Yeah, that's good. It kills E. coli. That's pretty good. So who knows? Maybe if you got E. coli poisoning, you sniff a rat K, you go away for a while, but maybe the E. coli dies. I don't know. So yeah, there's very little effect on it. Same thing with other antidepressants. So I've heard that some antidepressants, especially SSRIs, are really bad for it, but I don't see anything here about it. But then again, these are others, right? Other than so probably SSRIs are right here on the other side. So what do they show? Kills some things. I think that's Abilify. It kills E. coli too. A lot of testing on E. coli. Maybe it's just. That's normal. A lot of E. coli getting killed by SSRIs. It doesn't say if it's good or bad, though. A lot of it. Just like true science, huh? Alright. So we got an idea for most of it. The other ones are just, more and more pharmaceuticals and stuff, like antipsychotics and stuff that. Oh, we got a nice little thing here. Hold on. Where's the? There we go. Ah, beautiful. We got a little thing here. That's great. Like heroin in humans. Alcohol. Oh, I'm sorry, in humans. Nicotine. Cocaine. Higher abundance of blah 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 blah. Drugs of abuse. Drugs of abuse. Cannabis. Oh, this is the great thing. Look at this. It's beautiful. In humans, microbiome of chronic marijuana use displays a Paraphorvilla bacterial. Let me see if that's it. I don't see that. Just take this sticker off here. Alright, cool. It came off good. Wait, what was it called again? Prevailing and bacterial. Something like PPP. P. Nothing with a P. And some stuff with a B, though. So maybe those are bad? If anyone knows those, let me know. But that's what cannabis users like me have a lot less of. So who knows if that's good or bad. I'm going to do the research right now because I want to know. Because 13-fold, that's a lot. So let's see real quick. Now, you can't see this, but it's okay. You'll just hear me say it. Is a gram-negative bacteria are members of oral, vaginal, and gut bacteria. It's the same bacteria inside vaginas. Oh, 14 less than that. It's like anti-thought bacteria. Okay. Ooh, look at this. It says here that it's associated with people who have problems with the respiratory tract. Stuff like pneumonia, lung abscesses, pulmonary emphysema, chronic, blah 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 blah. Guys, this stuff, Prevailing, whatever, it's shown in abscesses. So if you have a urinary tract infection, this bacteria shows up. So weed in chronic weed users decreases this type of bacteria by 12-fold. It said fold, right? You guys see it right there. 13-fold, not 13 times. 13-fold. That's not 13 times, guys. That's like instead of doing like 2 times 2 times 2, it's more like 2 to the power of 2, and then do it again. How would it be again? Shit. 13-fold. So like it keep okay, instead of being additive, it's geometric. So instead of just like you keep adding 2 to it, instead you keep multiplying it by 2. And it just gets huge and huge, and 13-fold, that's huge. So, 2 to the power of 13. Look, I'll do it right now, just to show you how big that is. 2 to the power of 13, right? Where's my power symbol? Right. Where's my little, what do you call that shit? Oh, it doesn't have that. Okay, we'll just do it this way. 2 times 2. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'll just do this in Google, for fuck's sake. Sorry, guys. 2, and then caret 2 to the power, what I said, of 13, right? 13-fold. That is 8,192. So, 2 times 13, to give you, just to let you know, remember that, right? 2 times, so compare 8,000, right, to 2 times 13, and what do you get? You got 26. So you got 8,100 versus 26. So that, again, the bacteria that has been associated with all this nasty infections and gut bad stuff is 13-fold lower than in that. And let's see, that's bacterioids. Let's see what's the deal with that. Bacterioids. Let's deal with this. Okay, bacterioids, gram-negative again, anaerobic bacteria. What's the deal with them? Unusual in bacterial organisms. Oh, because that's an unusual one. Okay. Parthenogenesis. They call it by host. Okay, so this is a pathogen. Oh my God. Oh my God! It invades your colon and produces toxic material. It takes the sugars in your body and produces it into toxic stuff. Like it eats the sugars and then like farts out toxic stuff in your colon. Wow, so what they find is if you have a twin study and one twin has this stuff, this bacterial toid stuff, a lot of it, versus the other twin that doesn't, the difference they'll see is that the one who doesn't have it is lean, the one who does have it is obese. This is why cannabis is like so hated, guys, I always said, like, it's so hard to, like, smoke weed and get away with it because it smells and all that stuff, whereas if you do coke or heroin, you could just go to the bathroom real quick, shoot it up, nobody knows anything. It doesn't make your eyes red or anything, it doesn't make your clothes smell, But weed, it's, it's difficult, not everyone has a little oral spray or whatever, right? So, this is amazing, guys. It's absolutely amazing. See this is why this stream is awesome. I mean, what else are you going to learn about that? What else are you going to learn about the positive effects of weed on your gut biome, huh? Using science, huh? What else are you going to see there? Hey, my lips feel chapped. Right. I really should do this before the fact, not after. Okay. So let's go to the next one, right? We already said we went through most of these, right? Morphine, we saw that, right? Methadone, okay. Antidepressants. If any of you are antidepressants, you could watch that. You could pause that there and see what the deal is for you. Same thing with this. I'll stop it here because I know a lot of people are antidepressants. You want to see, right? So you could pause that later on. Check that out. All right. There's the references there. You could check that out. All right. Okay, all right. Let's go to the next one now. Ooh, okay, this one's cool. recreational cannabis use is associated with lower opioid prescriptions. Oh boy, look at that. Recreational marijuana legalization and prescription opioids received. All right, so what do we see here? What do we see? Results. The number of total doses, with a reduction in the number of total doses in prescriptions. Okay, so the reduction in the number of total prescriptions by 32%, total doses by 30%, and spending on other opioids by 31%, respectively, right? In models. So no evidence suggested that recreational marijuana legalization increased prescription opioids and received by Medicaid enrollees. There was some evidence in some states for Schedule III opioids following the legalization. So there you go. So anyone who ever, and there are still people that use this this argument against legalization of weed, that it leads to heroin use. This proves that flat out. This is literally the contrapositive, and just to that idea. No. This is the idea, right? That you have weed and you have opioid use, and you have people, and they don't get increased. There's no increase. So I mean, if it led, right, that means all these people who would start smoking weed in Colorado and such would in 5-10 years be doing dope, and we don't see that even when they're already doing dope or before they get prescribed the stuff. So if someone's smoking weed already and they get prescribed, they take less of a dose than they do if they weren't smoking weed. It's amazing, man. I'm saying the future of pharmacology is going to be like the entourage effect. It's going to be like, how does not just one drug work, but how does several drugs work in tandem with each other to create effects that are much greater or different than their constituents, right? The constituent parts, right? Like a gestalt, like something. That's going to be the future. Entourage effect. Multiple pharmaceuticals at once, creating a higher order effect on you. That's going to be the future. That's what happens with cannabis and a lot of the natural substances. It's, like you've heard, if you know cannabis, you know about the entourage effect. And it's basically saying that it's not just THC, but it's a bunch of these other substances all working at once to create an effect. And that's not, that happens with coffee too. It happens with tea. Like if you're taking tea or coffee, it's not just caffeine, it's a bunch of other stuff, and it's been shown to really make somewhat of a difference. I mean, I don't know how much for caffeine and such, but it has been. There's other, as we saw, xanthines, right? It's not just caffeine. There's other xanthines there that contribute to the overall effect of a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Okay. All right, so let's look at this right here. Study population. Discussion. We found no evidence to support the concern that recreational marijuana legalization increased opioid prescriptions received by Medicaid enrollees. So again, anyone says they're going to start smoking weed and then they're going to need more dope and they're going to make you spend because of Medicaid. Your taxes are going up. It's bullshit. Instead, there was some evidence in some model specifications that the legalization might be associated with a reduction in Schedule III opioids in states that implemented legalization in 2015, like Alaska, D.C., and Oregon. It appeared that if the hypotheses about marijuana's substitution effect and gateway effect on opioid use are both valid, the gateway effect of marijuana did not outweigh its substitution effect. Another possibility is that the hypothesis about marijuana's gateway effect lacks support. Duh. Unfortunately, we were not able to directly assess. That's how science works, because they didn't test that specifically. But it suggests that anyway. Okay, so there you go. They looked at two different models here, which, at Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 opioids. So they found a greater effect for Schedule 3, I think. but everything went down though. All right, let's go to the next one here. Here we go. This one's sweet. This goes back to psychedelics again. Hold on. No. What is this? Get out of here. Let's go back to this. Okay. All right. Recreational use of psychedelics is associated with elevated personality trait openness. So basically what they're saying here is if a person is using psychedelics recreationally, right, then they have higher instances of openness. That is true because, as I've talked about before, I am on the top 98th percentile. So I am in the top 2% of people who are, like the top 2 highest percent of people who are have psychological openness, which is basically imagination. Your imagination is just... So my imagination is in the top 2%. Or when I say top, I mean like the most imaginative people. Doesn't mean like they're imagining anything good or anything. It's just that when it comes to like imagination, I'm in that top 2 of people with the strongest imaginations. And I think it's pretty obvious, right? So this looks at our findings from this cross-sectional study, which means it looks at several people at one snapshot, not over time. So keep that in mind. Supporting evidence of a positive association between psychedelic experiences and openness to experience, and that, I mean, it's obvious, guys. You think someone who isn't open to experience is going to want to like intensify their experiences. I mean, right? And expands this to the context of recreational psychedelic use and links stereogenic and neurotransmission to openness to experience. A modulation of personality induced by psychedelic experience may have important therapeutic implications via its impact on value systems. So it may make me, psychedelics may make people more open. This is a difference here. So here are the controls on the right. Normal people who use MDMA only, right? And then people who use psychedelics. So it seems that people who use MDMA aren't necessarily more open to experience than that. By the way, this just 3 structure here. This is the bound, right? So this is for the 50. This is like the medium line. This is the lower bound. This is the higher bound, as you see. See, openness is much higher than the other ones. And openness was the only one that had significant effects at 0.05. None of these were significant. Significant means that they can't tell the effect apart from randomness. That's what statistical significance means. It means that if you found something, what is the chances that you would have found this anyway, regardless of the thing you're doing was true, right? Like what's just that this would have been just a random fluke. What's the chance? And yeah, you can figure that out. And the idea here is 0.05 means that there's 5% chance that it's random. And so behavioral science like this usually thinks 0.5 is good. Medical, like if they're looking at drugs that cure people or whatever things, they look at 99% certainty. This would be 95% certainty. So obviously, you can go as high as, like, I've seen as high in some places like tenth of a percent certainty. But the problem is, you might ask yourself, like, why don't they just try to push it as high as possible, right? It's because the more you increase the p-value, or the likelihood that it's not, right, a random fluke, there's well, this goes a little bit into the statistics, but there are two types of errors, right? This type of test prevents a type 1 error, which is you find an effect and it's not a real effect. It's just a random error. Okay, but there's another kind of error that this actually makes more likely, and that is the error that you actually find an effect but you don't notice it. That's called type 2. It's measured not by the alpha, which is what this is measured by, but it's measured by a beta. Well, that's the symbol for it, right? And so when the more you try to push up the p-value for that type 1 error, right? The more you try to push it up, the more type 2 you have. So it's a balance. This is how lots of things in stats are. That's why let me show you real quick. This book right here, which is it's a book on what the hell is it? Here it is. This is a book on testing, right? On testing using statistical techniques, and this is perfect example of what you're dealing with stats, right? You have things balancing on other things, It's like it's all it can get real complicated and stuff. So you have to keep that in mind when you see all this stuff, but. That's why I think stats, like people who come up with stats, it might be as hard as it might be the hardest math there is. Because it's so like reality. Because it deals with probabilities and looking at probability distributions and such in different ways, like prism. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so they might think, okay, then let's talk real quick about a possible mediator, meaning, like, what's the connection between, using psychedelics and having openness? And they might say here, maybe it's this 5-H2R SERT binding, right? Among all these individuals, frontal SERT binding was positively associated with openness, with a 1-year increase binding, but not frontal 5-HTR binding in a regressive analysis. This association was not significantly moderated. This positive SERT versus openness association was not present in controls, but there was no significant group by the frontal SERT binding effect on openness, providing only nominal evidence that MP individuals have more positive SERT. So, SERT, right? This I think has to do with frontal serotonin transponder. Is basically something that mediates or if you have a higher of it, your serotonin moves basically quicker, right? So they're speculating based on some evidence and preliminary evidence that, hey, these guys, people with higher SCRTs are the ones in our study that have the higher openness and the psychedelic use. And so they're like, oh, maybe this is what's causing it. Maybe it's the fact that their serotonin is more like sensitive or active, to just, to give you layman's terms, and that this stuff may be what's causing it. It's just, again, scientists want to understand things, they want to model things, they want to, diagram everything, right? So basically, openness was the highest they found for people using psychedelics, and none of the other traits, none of the other personality traits really had any effect on that. Like, so the only one that it seems to be a predictor of psychedelic use is openness. That's it. So this may be interesting in the sense of, if you are, trying to hire, looking for someone with a high sense of openness, and you don't want to just give them that test because you're afraid they might lie, you might just ask them, among other things, right? Not just this, but you might ask them, among other questions, if they have any interest in psychedelics. It might be kind of hard because of the, it's illegal, but if maybe you could do it in a place where where weed's legal or something, where it doesn't feel that bad, like the stigma's gone, you can kind of just bring that up, like, do you have any, I'm not saying you do them now, but do you have any prior experience with psychedelics? And if they say yes, then it might be, not just experience, but that enjoy them and stuff, right? Then you might have a good likelihood that the person is high on openness and will be a creative person. By the way, I hope I wasn't making this will make a lot of noise or something. All right. So again, people that use psychedelics compared with other substances, even weed, have been shown to be more creative. Exactly, and for someone might say, "Oh, but everyone who's open wants to search for drugs." Well, this shows no, because the people who are doing the other drugs aren't that open. Alright, so there you go, openness, psychedelics. Okay, now let's go to the relative lethality. That's not a word? Basically, we're going to look at the toxicity, the relative toxicity of different drugs. Okay. So we're going to look at this index here. We're going to look at all these... for new psychoactive substances. So this is basically an index of how dangerous or toxic all these like new drugs that came out in like the last 10 years, 20 years. And so if you're someone who uses RCs, let's say, or anyone who takes Molly or anything like that, because like I showed in the first study, it's very adulterated with all this new stuff. This is the study that you want to pay attention to, because you want to see, okay, is that thing I'm taking or could be taking, is it really a lot, is it something I should be worried about? All right, so let's look at this is the type of drugs they looked at here. They looked at stuff like the synthetic weed, they looked at piperazines, they looked at new types of opioids, they looked at new types of amphetamines like 2FA, 3FA, methylphentamine, 4-MDDA. They looked at M-bombs, which is basically a lot of LSD has been sold on, a lot of M-bombs has been sold under the name of LSD, so you got to watch out. Cathones, if you're a Molly user, you've been using cathones. Benzofurans, which similar to MDMA. And then you have basically benzodiazepine analog stuff like this one right here. Edzolam is considered probably one of the most euphoric benzos there are. But benzos aren't very euphoric, regardless. But you can buy this legally. This is not scheduled. You could buy it. I mean, you're not going to buy it in a store, but if you find it somehow, you can get it, and it's not legal. I mean, it's not illegal. Anyway, so we're going to look at their relative, here are the methods, how they did it. If you want to know, you can pause that, look through it if you like. Okay, so they looked at how, the deaths. So they're looking at deaths, measuring it by death, whether or not they were considered. Okay, hold on, let me see this here. Deaths registered in England and Wales for these substances. So, for instance, let's see, cannabis. Oh my God, look at this, 5 people died from cannabis, really, in 1993. But look, 0.0000112. I gotta really put this here. Like, really, Canada? Like, who are the 7 people that died, or the 3 people that died in 2016 from cannabis, or the 7 people that died from cannabis in 2014? Who are these people? Who were these people? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, look at ketamine. Nothing. Then later on, more. What's that one? Look, benzos, barely killing anybody. One idiot died in 2014 Who knows how he took it. Ketamine, methadone, not too much. Let me see, MDMA. Ooh, that's a lot. 25. Synthetic cathones. Look at that. 12 people in 2015 died from synthetic cathones. Look at that. That's synthetic. That's and then cannabinoids. Look at that. 14 people died from like spice in 2016. So this is a year of exposure. Total. Okay, let's look at the total now. Let's see. 10,000, that comes from heroin. Alright, 1,000, that comes from crack. 118 GPH. 400, that's MDMA. 45, let's see, where's weed? 59 people died from weed. What? Mean exposure age, 24. What? So there are 20-year-olds dying from weed? What? The fuck? What do you mean? Years of exposure. I'm sorry. I was going to say, what do you mean they're 6 years old using benzofurans? No, mean exposure. Years of mean exposure. Okay, sorry. I read that too quickly. Alright, let's go to the next one. Wait, then what's this? Oh, soul mentions. Okay, so these are... What means... Oh my god. So this is when only... Okay, this the first one we're looking at just now, that is... This is looking at soul mentions of selected substance. That means, like, only cannabis was... like, you know what it is? It might be, like, people die on it, like... They like, you know, they like almost like you get real drunk or something, you fall and hit your head open. Like, the alcohol didn't kill you directly, right? It was just that you got so intoxicated, you know, you fell over, and, you know, otherwise, like, if you were sober, you would have not done that. So I think that's what they're taking into account here. But that should take into account for toxicity, right? Like, just because something may not affect your body, like, organically like that, or your organs, if it, like, say, messes with your behavior, and let's say, you know, you do something that you otherwise would not do, or you do something unsafely, like behavioral-wise, like you walk down a flight of stairs on benzos, and the benzos never killed, but you fell down the flight and you snapped your neck. So I think you got to take that into account here. Any mentions? Okay. All right, let's look at. This is seizures of it, how much they've police have taken. Okay, hold on. Let me put this back. All right. Overall tox. So they calculate, like, how much they seize and all that stuff, and they give a little number, and they call it an index of TF, right? And then this is basically the overall index. So the higher the number, the more likely that the drug is toxic. So obviously heroin is most toxic here, followed by this. By the way, they didn't look at alcohol. Just keep that in mind when you see heroin. Alcohol is not considered here. It's all illegal drugs and the new ones. All right. So same thing with overall instance. So prevalence, you know, seizures. From not like getting a seizure, but the cops taking prevalence and seizures together. Heroin's still up there. Okay. Market size. Heroin's huge. Cocaine, crack, MDMA. So these are the biggest drugs in the market there. Makes sense, right? Heroin, cocaine, amphetamine, MDMA, weed. Then this is, again, prevalence, seizures, heroin's is up there all the time. Okay, now this is... What is this? Mean value. Okay, this deals with AMT. Okay, this is going to be this. Okay, right here. Which substances of this new class? So AMT is pretty dangerous. See, has a high index here. AMT It was a drug that was first used in the 60s, right? It's in the same class. It's a tryptamine, right? So it's like DMT, right? Or it's in the same class as DMT, right? Or psilocybin and stuff like that. And it's a euphoriant, right? So you know how we have two classes of psychedelics. We have tryptamines and we have phenethylamines, right? And so phenethylamines are where the what do you call it? The like peyote and stuff like that, mescaline, right? And MDMA is also a phenethylamine, right? So when we look at the phenethylamines, MDMA is like the euphoric phenethylamine. I mean, not every phenethylamine is euphoric, but they're more euphoric than not. Unusual, right? But there's ones that are more euphoric than others. Okay, in tryptamine land, right, so to speak, the most euphoric tryptamine, one of them, is AMT. Now, I've never had AMT, but I've known for a long time that many people who take AMT on the come down, almost always gives them a blistering headache. Many people describe the experience as very buzzing and beautiful and lovey, and like it's not too different from MDMA. Just you're kind of just feeling all really happy and empathetic, you know. But when you come down from it, you feel very, very like it's a very bad hangover, so to speak. And so I'm not surprised that it has a high level here. Now, GHB, right? Are we surprised that has a high index? PMA, but no one likes PMA anyway. Ooh, this is where it gets touching. So synthetic cathones, look at that, 1.95. Not that bad compared to the other ones. But if you look at this, the second highest one next to AMT, synthetic weed, 6 at an index of 6. That's high. Heroin. Okay, these were taken out, right? MPA. What is MPA? I think it might be related to MDMA. Novel amphetamines. Look at that. Look how safe relatively. So from this, we see that the two safest. This is amazing. According to this harm index that you saw they built it up. The two safest new drugs, like the new generations of drugs, the two safest ones are benzodiazepine analogs, the ones I said that were legal, and novel amphetamines, like 2-FMA, 3-FMA, 4-FMA, stuff like that. There's no 3-FMA. I'm sorry, it's only 2 and 4. Anyway, that is interesting, and you learned it here. Okay. See anything else? We see like the overall stuff comparing the two things, right? This is substance ability, and this is the hurt index, right? You can see cannabis, but heroin's all the way up there, so cannabis not that bad. All right, let's go to the next one. This one deals with how people are replacing pharmaceuticals in states where cannabis is legal with cannabis. Specifically for pain, anxiety, and sleep. So people are taking less pain meds, people are taking less anxiety meds, and people are taking less sleeping meds. That's why, like, weed is... Like anyone who says there is no proven or very few proven health benefits or medical uses for weed, those are the three that are the biggest: pain, anxiety, sleep. Those three always. Pain, anxiety, sleep. Pain, anxiety, sleep. You're not going to get any other natural substance that's going to be as good for those three things. And cannabis is... it's just, this is hard because the people who sell the sleeping pills, the people who sell the oxys, the people who sell the Xanax, they hate this about weed. Like, no, because people don't know that there are strains of weed out there that will not, or they will never make you anxious, ever, okay? So, a majority of patients reported using less opioids and as well fewer medications to treat anxiety, migraines, and sleep, or lack of sleep, after initiating medical cannabis, MC. A smaller portion used less antidepressants or alcohol. Look at that, that's good. Additional research is needed. Yeah, of course it is. We get maybe a nice little graph here. Okay. So this is the total use, right? And this is the how much it was reduced. So green shows how much it was reduced. So the number of people using slightly, right, went from 76% to about a little bit over 40%. Okay? And the people using a lot, wait, I'm reading this wrong. Hold on. Percentage of respondents with a reduction in opioid pain medications. Total N that regularly used each group of drugs is in parentheses. Lower number on each bar is the... okay. Where's the... Oh, okay. All right. I see now. I see. Okay, now it makes sense. Okay. 215, right, was the people who used before anything, right? For any cannabis or anything, right? And then the people who, who used a lot were reduced by 40%, and the people who used slightly were reduced by 76%. This is weird. I've seen stacked bars before, don't get me wrong, but not like this, though. It's strange. Because this isn't a total, This is if anything, 215, it should be, the graph should be higher, or maybe include a break or something, but I'm just an idiot, I don't know. Okay, let's try to do this one more time. The lower number is the percentage of people that reduced who were using a lot. The higher number, the upper number, is the total that reduced use, right? So the people who reduce any use, the people who reduce heavy use. Okay? Alright, now we go. Now I got it. Okay. So we could see that with opioids, when they had medical cannabis, 76% of everybody who used stopped using, somewhat, and the people who were using heavy, 40% of those stopped. And you could see the numbers for other anxiety, migraine, sleep, and alcohol. Let's see for alcohol then. 42% of people who were using medical cannabis reduced their alcohol use by somewhat. 25% of them reduced it by a lot. Okay, there we go. Sorry for that. We have another one here. Who knows about your medical cannabis use? Your spouse, mostly. Your family, over 87%. Friends, 87%. Who puts PCP? Oh, primary care provider. Okay, that's your doctor. I was like, PCP, what? I love it though. Look how it is in the world, right? Like your spouse is gonna go. I feel bad for the 2% of less than 2% of people who don't tell their spouse they smoke weed, but 87, 84 for everyone from your family to your friends to your doctor. But then look at your employer, it's just like, fuck that. My employer ain't knowing shit about my drug use, about my weed use. So there you go, guys. You saw it here first. Okay. Let's look at this. Oh, this is a cool study. It shows that in healthy adults, Ritalin increases learning. That's right. That if you are a healthy adult, no ADHD, if you take Ritalin when you're learning something new, certain dose though, right? You will learn better. There we go. Enhanced implicit learning on location priming task and implicit task switching task. In line with previous work, we found that these effects were greater in males. But the explicit measures didn't show learning. But we still showed learning implicitly. These results demonstrate that implicit measures of cognition are sensitive to pharmacological interventions in healthy volunteers. As such, implicit cognition measures may be a useful way of screening and tracking cognitive effects of novel agents in experimental studies. All they're saying is that when you start testing these substances through the FDA trials, that you should look at the cognitive effects. I guess at the moment they don't, as of 2018. So let's see some graphs about that learning, right? You might want to know what the design was. I'll read it real quick. It's a random control, double blind study, random control. They are matched for size and gender. Double blind treatment. So some people get placebo, some people get the stuff, but the placebos weren't active. So I don't like this. A drug, like whenever you have a psychoactive, you can't do it. You have to use what they call an active placebo. Like I'll give you an example, right? Like where they do studies where they test like psilocybin, right? They'll give the placebo something that feels like it's affecting you. So, for instance, the early studies would give you niacin, and you would get, like a vitamin B flush, where you get flushed. And if you don't know much about drugs, you might feel like you're coming up, and especially with the anticipation. You might feel like, oh my God, it's coming up. Whereas the newer studies use low doses of amphetamines. And the idea there is, like, if you don't know what psilocybin's like, and you're taking this amphetamine, you might think the amphetamine is like psilocybin, but you feel different. So, I don't know if they did that here. Let me see. I don't think so. They would have said active placebo. But I could be wrong. And they gave them questionnaires to measure learning, mood, anxiety, cognitive function. The test they gave them was on a computer. So you can see that for females, methylphenidate really didn't work that much in terms of, so you have repetition priming and you have negative priming. Two kinds of implicit learning. Implicit learning means you don't notice you're learning it. It's kind of like unconscious learning. Kind of like the way you learn, like, not necessarily a route somewhere, but the houses or the things on the route. Like, you're just trying to get to the place, so you know what street to go through, but you don't really care about what the houses they look, but you learn what they look like anyway, just by the mere exposure. So this is this kind of unconscious learning. What they show that methylphenidate increases unconscious learning. Not the kind of learning where you're like, I learned this, but that unconscious learning. And that's still important, which is, it's interesting because you would think it would deal with the will, but it doesn't. Anyway, but what you would see for negative priming, it doesn't really work very well. But for males and repetition priming, it works very well. So that means you need less repetition of something to learn it. On methylphenidate, on Ritalin. So let me say that again. On Ritalin, a healthy adult will learn better by needing less repetition. Like, instead of learning by, because everyone learns by repetition, they would need less of it. Okay. Talk about explicit tasks, right? The results here. Okay, here we go. Here's okay. Hold on, but I want to see the placebo, right? Let's see, where is it? They don't tell you. They don't tell you what the placebo is? That's whack. I don't like that. They should tell us what the, like, if it was sugar water or if it was niacin. I mean, come on. That matters, man. Like, if that's like a manipulation check, man. Like, if it's obvious you're not on something, then it's not gonna. You gotta have them believe they're on it. Hold on, let me just do this. No. Nah. They don't tell us what the placebo is. That's BS. Okay. I'd see the other one right here. Reaction time, learning rate, not too much, yeah. So it's just really implicit learning. Oh wait, here's something significant. Your accuracy learning rate is higher with methylphenidate, with Ritalin. So the accuracy that you have in learning is higher with for males, is higher. It's actually less with females, but it's not significant. But it's intradimensional. I don't know what that means. Intradimensional learning. Pick up later. Oh, okay. I see here. IDED class. What is that? Okay. Here it is. IDED task. What is that? So this is the task they did better on. One of the tasks they did better on. So what is this? Is a set shift dot probe task in which the location of a target stimulus is probabilistically predicted by predicting. Oh, okay. This is cool. Wow. So this was really heightened. Okay. So what this test is, right, is you see a bunch of dots moving over time. Like they'll show you like 10 slides of dots moving, around, right? And the idea is you're supposed to predict where some of those dots are going to move after seeing them move, like, a few times. So they found is when you're taking Ritalin and you're a healthy adult, your ability to learn, like, to predict where those dots will move is much, like, the accuracy of it is much better. Like, let's just so you could see what the difference was again, because it was huge. Okay, right here. So accuracy learning rate, you see? Oh, but this is for extra dimensional. Whoops. So that's for extra. Which one was extra dimensional? This is implicit. It was. So it was a priming task then? No. Well, anyway, you could see it there. For the accuracy of learning and extra dimensional learning. As I said, I gotta. Oh wait, it says it right here. Figure 2A. No, figure 2B. Oh no, so that was the task. Okay, but I don't get what the difference between intradimensional and extra dimensional means. So in that IDED test that I explained before with the pattern, with the predicting the dots, that's the test. But I guess there's two ways of doing it, or there's two kinds of outcomes. There's an extra dimensional and intradimensional. So let's go back to that IDED thing and let me see if. Okay. Oh, here it is. This is okay. Now I'm getting it completely now. Okay, so let's go back to the graph. Okay. All right. So extra dimension, right? So okay, going back to the to what the study was talking about, right? Where the hell? Okay. So going back to this, right? The task is to see the moving dots, right, and then predict them. They found that if it's extra dimensional, right, that means that you're better at predicting the dots where they move if the dots are changing shape and color. But if they're not changing shape and color, then there really is no accuracy. Is not that great. It's like 0%, as it says. Or I'm sorry, it's not 0%, but it's the rate is 0. So it's not really, it doesn't change, it doesn't get better. That's the idea. Whereas if you're taking the methylphenidate, the Ritalin, it gets better for you as you're trying to tell and predict where the new shapes will be and what color they're. So think about that. So it's kind of like those IQ tests where, so you see the things and it's shape. So it's like, okay, you see like 5 slides of things moving, in shape, and now it's like, where is it now? And you predict the pattern. So so in a nutshell, those kinds of pattern recognitions, Ritalin works better for you. All right, so we got that down. Let's go to the next study here. Why are people? I'm busy right now. Okay, busy. I'm busy. Jesus Christ. Okay, so safety pharmacology of acute MDMA administration. Okay, so this right here deals with. I hate when people it's just so what's the word? So rude, man. Okay. Okay, so this is talking about how MDMA, a safe pharmacology for MDMA. So like basically they're giving us an effect of what MDMA is like. For people that how to use it for healthy people and not have it be something that's toxic. And so in conclusion, MDMA produced predominantly acute positive subjective drug effects. Bad subjective drug effects and other adverse effects were significantly more common in women. MDMA administration was overall safe in physical and psychiatrically healthy subjects in a medical setting. However, the risks of MDMA are higher in patients with cardiovascular disease and remain to be investigated. So if you got heart problems, don't take MDMA. But it says here that people who take it in a certain controlled, good setting, not at a club, sweating and being all overheated, moving around a lot, but in a controlled setting, well, basically like a bedroom, a comfortable bedroom setting, people like that, MDMA is perfectly healthy for them. It doesn't cause any negative effects. See some of the adverse effects of MDMA. They looked at MDMA on kidney fix. So basically when they gave these guys the MDMA and recorded not just their subjective effects, but they also recorded their vitals, and they gave them like blood work. So they looked at like how the kidney levels, liver, all that stuff. They looked at this is the result of 9 different studies. So they looked at aspects of psychological and physical harm. The present study showed clearly greater positive than negative acute subjective effects, obviously, right? MDMA induced a state of predominantly positive mood across different laboratories, with one exception. Modest apprehension anxiety was present in some subjects, as previously reported, whereas social anxiety has been shown to decrease. In the present study, anxiety was reported in the list of complaints as an acute adverse effect by 7% of the subjects after 125 milligrams MDMA administration, but not after 75, though. So definitely people who take less than 120, like, half of 125, or almost a little bit over half of 125, they don't have as much anxiety as people who take a full dose. There were no cases of severe anxiety or panic attacks. Any psychological distress was minimal. Positive effects were reported retrospectively, so when they look back after a while, in 2/3 of the people. Where only 15%, oh my God, where only 15% were disappointed with their experiences in retrospect. Okay, now the study more importantly looked at the physical responses, like you know how some people say, oh, it wrecks your liver or it messes with your kidneys or something. Well, we're going to find out what it does. We already know it doesn't do anything, but we're going to figure it out. The present study also determined the exact time course of the overall subject response to MDMA. The average onset time, peak time, and duration were so the average onset time was 33 minutes. So most people felt it within half an hour. The peak time for it to reach a peak was about an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half. And the entire effects, like by the time they felt like completely back or mostly back, it was about a 4-hour trip for most of them. And this is comparable to previous studies. Oh, this is interesting. The duration of the effect represented the time an individual experienced at a subjective drug for about over 10% of his or her peak experience. It has been suggested that the duration of the effect of MDMA at 125 milligrams can be prolonged by another dose as a booster, about a third, or in this case half or so, 2 hours after the initial dose. By the way, this is I just want to make sure you guys know this. This is true with most substances, that you can take an initial dose and then later on kind of a booster dose, and it could prolong the effect, not make it any stronger, but just kind of keep it going, right? And so with MDMA, they kind of brought it down to a science where they figure out. I used to think it was a third, but I guess it's half, where you take a certain dose, and then 2 hours later you take another, and that prolongs it. That extends the experience, the peak. Maybe instead of like it's a 2-hour peak, it goes to 3 hours. It's great. You should always do it. It's shown to be safe. Safe. I know I look crazy when I said safe, right? Like, just join us. Take the drug. I'm just saying, if you do it already, okay? I'm not telling anyone to do anything except for certain married couples. However, the short duration of action. However, the short duration of action of MDMA relative to its long plasma half-life is attributable to acute pharmacological tolerance. Wow, immediately. Thus, the subjective effects decline despite high concentrations of MDMA in the body. This is why you shouldn't do more than one booster. It's telling, like, this is literally saying that it doesn't matter how much you take. It's not, if you take more than a certain amount, it's just a ceiling effect. It's not going to get you any higher. You're just going to get more negative effects. Oh, this is interesting. The effect duration, right? Not the intensity of the effect, but how long it lasted was no different between people who took 75 milligrams and people who took 125 milligrams, where 125 is usually considered the normal average dose. By the way, the molly you're getting or the pill you're taking of MDMA, even if it's pure MDMA, like I tested it, it is going to be dosed way higher. Unless you know the dose and they tell you, it's going to be dosed way higher on average than 125 milligrams. It'll probably be dosed around 150. Some are dosed over 200. So just keep this in mind. this is unlike LSD, by the way, where the difference between 75 micrograms and 125 micrograms in duration, like the more you take, the longer it will be, but it will cap out at 12 hours. Like I knew a guy who used to synthesize LSD. He dropped about 15 milligrams of it on his hand. That would be like the equivalent of maybe something like that would be the equivalent of something like, let's say, if 1 milligram is, let's say, 10 doses, so that would be 150 doses at once. And he said that even though it happened, it was really gnarly. It was really intense. He says about after 12 hours of it, he felt like he didn't stop after 12 hours, but that after 12 hours, he felt that it was starting to come down. Oh my God, this is so relentless, man. I'm busy right now. Jesus Christ. Okay. So there you go, and it shows that these things have a healthier outcome there. So so effects on MDMA on kidney and liver function. Unchanged levels, similar plasma levels were similar before and after. Red blood cells were reduced significantly more in women. But they did not reach it. So for women, red blood cell count went down. Not by a lot, but it went down. Where men, nothing happened. So basically, when it comes to your liver, your kidney, and your blood, MDMA has, in these proper doses, right, has no negative effect on it. Your liver is not going to get wrecked by taking 125 plus another 60 milligram dose in one night. You're not going to get wrecked by that. Then again, people take a lot more than that usually on their own. And it's sad, because as it's showed here, it's really simple, or it's really clear that there is a ceiling effect. And so, it doesn't matter how much more MDMA you take, it's not going to even reach your brain. And all it's going to do is you're going to just make your organs work harder to eliminate something that's something in the body that gets metabolized. It's just going to have to work harder metabolizing it. And that's a problem. So again, your best thing here is either taking some dose between 75 milligrams and 125, with 125 being the upper limit, and then after that, about 2 hours later, taking about a little bit over half that dose, or around half that dose. Okay? So that again, this is how you should use MDMA according to this study. Between your first dose, between 75 and 125 milligrams, with a booster dose 2 hours later, that represents about half of your original dose. Okay? Great. That's how you use MDMA responsibly, according to science. Alright, there we go. Alright, let's go to another one. We're almost done. Look, we have about 5 left here. Okay. Now this right here, this is from the Cato Institute. Yeah. Cato, with Cato, it's like sometimes they're great, sometimes they're fucked up. But with the war on drugs, they're great. With immigration, not so much. But anyway, so what they're saying here is that it works. That working on harm reduction, right, is a much better way of reducing drug-related deaths and problems than just outright banning them. Okay. So here are the national overdose deaths, right, that have been going on up to 2017, right? Harm reduction is, I'll read it, and harm reduction is a big topic of mine. Like, I really believe in it. I think it's the way forward out of this, because it's the way in the middle between, like, saying, let's make it completely illegal, and then saying, well, let's just laissez-faire, just do whatever you want. Harm reduction says everything has harm. Let's try to reduce it through different strategies. So, unlike prohibition, harm reduction strategies begin with the realistic and non-judgmental premise that there has never been and will never be a drug-free society. Akin to the credo of the medical profession, first do no harm, harm reduction seeks to avoid measures that exacerbate the harms the black market already inflicts on non-medical users, and to focus strictly on the goal of reducing the spread of disease and death from drug use. Many who prefer stigmatizing rather than tolerating drug use criticize harm reduction as a signal of defeat, but harm reduction has a success record that prohibition cannot match. Decades of experience in several developed nations show harm reduction strategies reduce overall deaths, the spread of infectious diseases, and in many cases the non-medical use of dangerous drugs. Harm reduction involves a range of public health options. These include medication-assisted treatment, needle exchange programs, safe injection sites, heroin-assisted treatment, deregulation of overdose treatments like Narcolepsone, which is Narcan, and decriminalization of weed, of cannabis. I love how they put cannabis and not marijuana. Oh my God, okay, just hold on a second, please. All right, there we go. Okay, so medication-assisted treatment. So he talks about different ways, and so medication-assisted treatment would be like you get legal heroin, twice a day, right? And they've done this in the Netherlands, and they've shown that the people who are heroin addicts and they come in to do their heroin in this controlled place, they don't take it out. They don't do it anywhere else. They go there, they get the dose, and they leave again. It's pure. It's pharmaceutical grade. It's a great dose. It's really good. They've been doing the same with alcohol, where they give them like a beer or two a day or something like that, and they find that it's good that they're maintained that way, that it keeps them out of trouble. They keep their job going. They have their family going, because at that point it just becomes medicalized. It's like, yeah, he's a dope, he's addicted to heroin, but it's all it means is that he goes to this clinic twice a day for like 20 minutes, and then that's it. You might say, oh, it's annoying to have to go there twice a day. Yeah. This talks about the similar drugs, though. Hold on. What happened here? All right. Okay, and they're just explaining drugs like methadone and such. But I want to see if they talk about like actual heroin as medicated. Look. Oh no. See, but this is what they don't tell you, though. So it's true that the people who stay in, like, the people who are, like, prescribed methadone or bupropion or something, Subtex, every day, and, to replace their heroin, what I've noticed is they will tell the doctors and everyone that, hey, I'm not using it anymore, but I need to maintain. And what you'll see is that either two things. One is they'll take a certain low or regular dose on the weekdays, and then on the weekends they'll take a higher dose and get like a little bit of euphoria from it, because it's still an opioid, despite it being weaker than heroin. The other thing that would happen is, and this is very common, they will on the weekdays take their maintenance medicine, opioid maintenance medicine, and then on the weekends they will use a hardcore opioid like heroin or something. So that's something this study I don't believe is explaining very well. But then again, no one really, this is stuff I know from the street. This is not stuff that would be reported, right? I don't think people will be telling their doctors this. They'll just say, hey, I'm doing well, I want to stay on the treatment. I'm not using. Yeah, so I don't think they would talk about that. And you got needle exchange programs, right? Reduces HIV and hepatitis. You got safe injection sites. That's been shown to be a good thing. Keeps them off the street. People say you're just babysitting heroin users. Well, is it there, or you want them to be in somewhere where your kid can run into them? Plus, it keeps them in a place that everyone's safe. More safe than usual. Then they're more likely to be. They can reach for help more likely and all that stuff. They can. Here it is. Heroin assisted treatment. This is what I was talking about. So despite the success of the needle exchange program and the safe injection sites, patients who use these facilities are still injecting substances they obtained on the black market, whose purity, quality, and dosages are unknown. Illicit heroin suppliers increasingly lace their products with fentanyl, which increases the intensity of the drug, but also the risk of overdose. For someone who takes a lot of heroin, having a little bit of fentanyl in your dope is pretty good in terms of it being strong, but if you're not a chronic user, or taking that much, it will kill you. In some cases, suppliers lace illicit heroin with carfentanil, 30 to 50 times more power than fentanyl. Heroin-assisted treatment affects supplying patients with controlled doses of heroin, eliminates uncertainty about the purity, quality of all. It also mitigates the patient's retention problem seen with the medical. Basically, it doesn't have a problem with. You're not going to have a problem with them relapsing, basically because they're already on. Critics of the heroin-assisted treatment worry that it creates a perception that intravenous heroin use is safe, which it is safe, when medically supervised. While heroin is inherently risky, no, it's not. Yeah, that's why I said Switzerland. I thought it was the Netherlands. No, Switzerland. I did it. Oh, some people take heroin in a pill or a liquid. That's weird. They're allowed to take heroin in pill form if they held on a job for 6 months and stayed in the program. Wow. They're crushing that up and sniffing it. Because oral heroin is not even that good. But check it out. So what they found was, as they were doing this, the program saw less and less people use heroin overall. So this is the beautiful part, right? So the whole allure of the drug, the heroin addict and against society. What they saw was some scrubby dude going to a clinic every day, and the kids are like, "That's heroin." That's, what I mean? They're like, "Oh, that's not cool." It's not like transgressive. It's just you're going to some clinic and getting a dose every day, and now going to job and having a family. It's just it took the whole allure away from it. And it showed more people stayed in the program than in any other similar methadone program. The felony crimes by patients fell by 60%. %82 of the people who sold heroin to support their habit stopped. No overdoses have ever been reported out of the program. This is Switzerland. In 2008, the people voted, and 68% of the people voted to keep the program around permanently. So most people in Switzerland were happy with this. 40% of all people in the program found employment by 4 years after the program. And then they also talk about relaxing restrictions on Narcolepsy. That you can't get high on it. It's like an opioid. It's just it's great for people to buy over the counter, because if you overdose and you use it, it's like a nose spray. You can save someone's life like this, man. They say, oh, but it encourages use. It's like, if someone is overdosing, don't you want them to fucking survive? Or maybe you do want them dead. That's what happens. That's what they say until it's their fucking son that becomes a dopehead. You know, these politicians, they think, oh, better off dead, the criminal, and then they realize, oh, my firstborn son is a fucking dopehead, and then they change their minds about it. Relaxing restrictions on cannabis. How we already saw that, how opioid use goes down with cannabis. So cost effectiveness, and it saves money. Look at that, cost effectiveness. All right, let's look at another. Okay, let's look at another one. Okay, we got 4 left, everybody. Okay, all right, this is cool. This has to do with my favorite drug. Not my favorite drug, but the drug that I believe is the best for you. This is the best drug for you. This is the one drug I would say everyone should do in a good setting, like, you know, not just any time, but like if you can get, you know, the chance to do it, do mushrooms. I'll say that again. If you can get the chance to do mushrooms, especially in a safe environment, do them, because they are good for you. They are the only drug that actually will give you good effects. Now, this study shows that empirically. And what they find is that people who have psilocybin mystical experiences and psilocybin, trip on psilocybin, and take enough, like where they feel all trippy and loopy and all that stuff, they show positive changes in pro-social attitudes and behaviors, meaning they are more empathetic, they're just all around better people to others. Mushrooms make you a better person. That's right. Mushrooms make you a better person. End the story. There we go. Let's check out the study now. Let's see. I'll just show you the element here. Outcomes at 6 months included rates of spiritual practice and persisting effects. Compared with low dose, high dose psilocybin produced greater acute and persisting effects. Take a high dose. At 6 months, compared with what's LDSS? Low dose. Both high-dose groups showed... where's LDS? Oh, here it is. Support for spiritual practice. Okay. Both groups showed significant positive changes on longitudinal measures of interpersonal closeness. They got closer with the people around them. Gratitude for life. Meaning of life and purpose. Forgiveness. All right? Transcending, like not being afraid of death, and having daily spiritual experiences, religious faith growing, and your ability to cope. Community observer ratings, meaning this is where it's even better. You might say, oh, but people are saying that, yeah, of course people from their own perspectives get better. Well, guess what? They asked the people around them. They said, did this guy get better after he did that? They're like, yeah, he did.